This is a book review and some interesting ideas I found in this book or course, The Art of Critical Decision Making. I'll start with the quick review. I'll give this book 3 stars out of 5. It has some interesting ideas, but the stories are too long. The instructive lessons are not as great. And again, I'm not in managerial positions at the moment. So if you are, you might have more interesting ideas from this course, but I haven't, so I didn't find it as interesting and important. It has some interesting ideas, but overall it's not as great. So 3 stars. Let's see what's the notes. I wrote some notes. The first one is intuition is pattern recognition. So that's basically what intuition is when you found the patterns. When you're better at it, you have better intuition in some way. Intuition can be learned through experience, watching experts, and the process of thinking through problems. So we actually can learn intuition in some way, which is a little counterintuitive, but we can actually learn intuition. So the options are through experience. So the more experience we have, the better intuition is. Or watching experts, how do they solve the problems? And the process of going through the problems, of thinking through the problems, that can help the intuition. People often hold information for a variety of reasons. Our job is to try to create an environment which people share more information. Sometimes people do not want to say for whatever reason, what they think. And the job of a leader or of whoever is responsible is to create an environment in which people share the information and do not hold the information from themselves. Side note, stories are too long and the instructed lesson is not as great. So I spoke about it a little before. The stories are way too long, so you give stories, case studies. You give them and break them apart. They're too long, hard to understand sometimes. All the details, which are not necessary. And the instructive lesson is not as great, so why would you use that case study? You can use a fictional case study. You don't have to have a real one. Sometimes those real ones are really complicated, and there is no reason to go through that only for a really small kind of minor instructive lesson. In football, there is teams that play similar games to the opponent's game. It's kind of interesting. First of all, it has this thing. So there's special teams that what they do, they learn others' team's game and they play against your team in some way. So that's kind of interesting that they kind of play that game in order for you to learn how your opponents will play that game. I hope that makes sense, but it's kind of an interesting idea that they have it in the first place. And it's also important if you go to courts, for example, so you need to think about what your opponent will say. So it has many similar situations in our lives. We need to pay attention to other views and not marginalize the devil advocate. We tend sometimes to marginalize other views or the devil advocates because I know it's not important, but we should really pay attention to what they're saying because it's really important. Making people think and put themselves in other people's shoes help to have a productive discussion. So when you put yourself in other people's shoes, it usually helps to create or help the whole team have a productive discussion because you can see the problem more widely. You understand better what every side has or what every side is thinking. One company had a bell in which people ring the bell if colleagues critique others' ideas in the brainstorming stage. So the brainstorming stage is the really initial stage when you just throw ideas without critiquing. When people critique the idea, they had a bell. When you critique the idea, someone ring the bell. Do not critique the idea as in that stage. So that stage is only for brainstorming. Do not critique. It's really important to have that stage. One company, that just do. The moment of gotcha is not good for the company, because those people vetoing ideas without offering anything else, and the company doesn't move forward. So there is those people that only wait for the gotcha moment. That's their job, not the official job, but that's their job. And they always wait for that moment of gotcha. Oh, I told you. But those people sometimes vetoing or saying, no, I'm gonna remember that, I'm gonna say that. Those people sometimes are not good because they're vetoing the ideas and nothing is moved forward. You can't critique the idea without offering anything else in some way. If that's the best solution, you might as well do it in some. Some companies are becoming dysfunctional where nothing is moving. So similar kind of an idea. So when nothing is moving, it becomes dysfunctional. It doesn't move anymore because it's just too heavy, or there's too much critiquing, whatever reasons, nothing is moving forward. Analysis paralysis caused by keep gathering more data. So I have this number sign in the beginning, means I like this. It's important in some way. Usually more than 90% has a diminishing return. So that's what analysis paralysis, because you can always gather more data. You can always have more information and think about it more. So the idea is that usually more than 90% has a diminishing return, which means that usually if you invest more time in analyzing, the return will be less than what you invest. So usually usually 90%, you should just let it go and make your decision. Complex systems will inevitably have significant failures. This is not a cause of one particular event. Rather, that's the nature of complex systems. It's few problems that interact together. So that's always happens with complex systems. They will have failures, and significant ones. But usually people is what caused that event? Let's try to avoid. But usually it's not one event. It's an interaction of a few events, a few failures, few problems together that creates one big one. But all those small ones are really hard to notice. The best way to gather data from different agencies is a model similar to Wikipedia. So they have in governmental agencies, they didn't collaborate well. And they found that the best way to collaborate between themselves, it has a Wikipedia, similar to a Wikipedia model, that have a page about a subject and everyone can update and add their information instead of other ways. It's an interesting way to gather data. Problems aren't the problem. Hidden ones are. So they always have problems, but as long as they're out there, it's not as bad. But when they're hidden, that's where the problems are starting to be problems. It's important that people could raise mistakes without getting punished for it. So some places, if you say something about something that doesn't go right, even in your team, especially in your team, sometimes you won't get punished for it. So we have to create that environment in which people can do that, can still raise the problems and not get punished for it, because if they will, they're not going to say anything. And then the company loses. That's the last one. The leader should hunt for problems since they don't tend to arise properly. So similar kind of an idea. That's why the leader should actually go for a hunt, literally, to find those problems, because whatever you're going to do, those problems will not going to raise themselves. You actually need to go and find them yourself. Actively find them. So that's all for notes. Again, it's a 3-star. Has some interesting parts, but not as much. Too long. Could be half, I would say even half the length. But if it really fascinated you, you could still learn. If this subject is fascinating you, can still learn some things from it, but not as great. And that's it. Thank you.